Okay, now let's go to the other objection so we can destroy it, because I know what these six sons of the devil will say. Oh, but hold on. Jesus only became better than the angels. Look, after he ascended, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has obtained is more excellent than theirs. If Jesus is God, how can he become better than the angels and superior to them after his ascension? Very easily. Positionally, when Jesus was on earth, he had taken the status of a servant and a slave and willfully made himself lower than the angels in position and status. He willfully, voluntarily condescended to assume our lowly status. And because of the sin of Adam and Eve, humans are now positionally lower in status and glory than angels. So in his love for us, Jesus accepted to condescend himself to take the status of fallen human beings by becoming flesh like us, flesh and blood like us, Hebrews 2:14 and 15, and assume our lowly status in order to then pay the debt of sin and then exalt us in union with him above the angels. It's talking about him being lower than them in status because that's what he chose to do, because to become flesh like us means he's going to assume the status and position we have because of the fall in order to then exalt us to the glory we had before the fall. And that's exactly what Hebrews 2 says here. Hebrews 2, 5 to 9. So how could Jesus, if he's God, become better than the angels and superior to them by name, meaning by authority? Well, because he's God who then became flesh and humbled himself to be lower than them positionally, to share our fate and to assume our status, to be in solidarity with us, so that now in union with him, he pays our debt of sin, thereby undoing the curse and then exalting us in union with him above the angels. Here it is, Hebrews 2, 5 to 9. I'm not making it up, it's right here. For it was not to the angels, for it was not to angels that God subjected the world to come. So the world to come, the new heaven and earth, won't be subject to angels, of which we are speaking. It has been testified. Now he's going to quote Psalm 2, 6 to 8. It has been testified somewhere. What is man that thou art mindful of him, or the son of man that thou carest for him? Thou didst make him for a little while lower than the angels. See? Humanity is lower than the angels in status for a little while. Why? Because of the sin of Adam and Eve. Their sin brought the judgment of humanity being demoted and losing the glory that made them now lesser in position to angels. Right? Thou didst make him for a little while lower than the angels. Thou hast crowned him with glory and honor. Now watch. Putting everything in subjection under his feet. Now look what he says. Now, in putting everything in subjection to him, man, he left nothing outside his control. But now he says something interesting. We who are believers, we don't see things subject to us. In fact, we see demons and their children wreaking havoc on us. So he says, as it is, we do not see yet everything in subjection to him. Because demons are controlling events and working through their agents to persecute the righteous. So we don't see things subject to us. But now, here's the guarantee that the world to come will be ours. What's the guarantee? What's the proof that God has given us? The world to come is ours. No more demons, no more wicked. Here's the guarantee. Verse 9. But we see Jesus, who for a little while was made lower than the angels. You see? Now crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death. He died and now has been exalted, and he's higher than angels in status, so that by the favor of God, he might taste death for everyone. Now, does it make sense? Do you understand now why Hebrews 1:4 says Jesus becomes better than the angels, and the name he inherited, the authority is superior to theirs after he died, after he rose from the dead, after he ascended to sit on God's throne? Because Hebrews told you, in his love for us, Jesus willfully humbled himself, condescended to become flesh and blood like us, to be human like us from the virgin, and assume our lowly status, to identify with us and to be in solidarity with us. That's the rest of Hebrews 2. So now by dying the death we deserve and paying the debt, He can now undo the curse and restore man to the glory that man had before sin, because in his exaltation, he exalted humanity, because he was exalted in the flesh as man, not just as God. Jesus, in his infinite love for us, maggots, chose to humble himself and humiliate himself by becoming flesh and blood like us from the virgin, and then assume our lowly status, making him lower than the very angels he created in status and position, to share our faith, to show his love and solidarity with us. Do you understand now why it makes perfect sense for Hebrews 1:4 to say that after Jesus died and ascended to heaven to sit on God's throne, he becomes better than the angels, and his name is authority superior to theirs, because he went from being lower in status and position and glory to share our faith, to now being exalted above them, not just as God, because as God, he is their creator and sustainer, Hebrews 1:2-3, but as man, he did it as the God-man. As man in the flesh, he now exalted humanity above the angels. That's how we know the world to come will be ours, and the angels will be subject to us, and the wicked won't rule over us, because Jesus has guaranteed our glorification in his glorification. That's the teaching of Hebrews 1 and 2. Now let's explain Matthew 28:18, because we're talking about the same theme. Matthew 28:18. Here you go. This is the other passage he butchered to his humiliation. Look at this. Okay. Matthew 28:18. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. See, it was given to him, so he can't be God because someone gave it to him. All right. All right. Let's see why Jesus was given authority. Are you ready? Jesus perfectly practices what he preaches. What do I mean? Watch here. The same Gospel of Matthew, Matthew 12:17-18, explains why Jesus was given authority after his resurrection, which would then result in his ascension. Okay, now watch here. Know what, everyone else? Let's see what happens when we read Matthew in context. Matthew in context, okay? Watch here. Matthew 12:17-18, speaking of Jesus fulfilling Isaiah 42, verse 1. Okay? Matthew 12:17-18. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. Behold, my servant. Oh, wait, Jesus was a servant on earth? He voluntarily subjected himself to become a servant to the Father? My beloved, with whom my soul is well pleased, I will put my spirit upon him, and he shall proclaim justice to the Gentiles. So, wait, Jesus came to the earth to be a servant, setting aside his authority and glory, willfully to become a servant in his love for us, to fulfill the Father's will to save us? What about Matthew 20:28? Even as the Son of Man came not to be served. Wait, so Jesus says, I didn't come to be served for now, but to serve. I came to be the servant and to give his life, my soul, as a ransom for many. Since Matthew has already told you that Jesus came to the earth as a servant, and Jesus says, I've come to serve you by dying for you to save you. Why would it shock you that while on earth, as a servant, he has no authority but set it aside, and that after he died and accomplished the Father's purpose, he would then be given authority, and authority he relinquished while he's on earth? How does that contradict the Trinity? How does that contradict the Trinity? Can you explain that to me? In fact, you know what Jesus did? He modeled for us the life to live. He practiced what he preached, and he practiced it perfectly, which is why we're called to emulate him, because you know what Jesus said? Watch here, Matthew 23:12. Jesus practices what he preaches perfectly, so he's modeling for you the life to follow. Follow me, carry the cross like I did, and deny yourself like I did, and this is what God will do. Matthew 23:12. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. What better example, what better display of utter humility and humbleness than Jesus, God Almighty, becoming flesh, and practicing what he preaches by humbling himself as an example for us to follow. Look, I humbled myself, and look, my Father exalted me. You do the same, humble yourself, and the Father will exalt you. Where's the problem? 1 Peter 5, 5 to 7, pay attention to 6. 1 Peter 5, 5 to 7, pay attention to 6. Likewise, you that are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another. For God opposes the proud, like he's opposing this tool of the devil and silencing him. But God gives grace to the humble. Now watch. Humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that in due time he may exalt you. Jesus perfectly practiced what he preached as an example for others to follow. Cast all your anxieties on him, for he cares about you. So where's the problem? Where's the problem with Jesus, the Son of God, humbling himself to become a servant on earth, taking the status of a servant, in his love for humanity, becoming flesh and blood from the Virgin, to share our lowly status, to show his love and solidarity with us, humbling himself to the status we have because of sin, and then paying the debt of sin to undo the curse and judgment that fell upon us because of sin, and then as a man exalting humanity above the angels as a guarantee that if we remain faithful, we will share in his exaltation. Where's the problem for the Trinity? Psalm 2 is talking about Jesus becoming the royal Davidic Son of God, which only could happen if he became flesh from David and ascended to heaven to sit on the throne as David's heir. Now, here's what's astonishing. Here's what the Lord did. David's throne was on earth. Guess what Jesus did? By becoming the Son of David and going into heaven as a man, as a glorified man with a glorified physical body, he now exalted not only humanity, but David's line, because by going into heaven as a son of David, for the first time in heaven's experience, a human figure, a human being, a son of David, now sits on heaven's throne, not just as God, who's one with the Father, but as man and the heir of David. So he exalted David's status by sitting enthroned in heaven as David's heir, whereas up to that point, David's heirs only sat on the throne on earth. Revelation 22:16. I, Jesus, Revelation 22:16, have sent my angel to you with this testimony for the churches. Notice, not I was, I am right now in heaven in glory. I am, present tense, the root and the offspring of David, the bright morning star. Now, this should blow you away. He's saying right now in heaven, I am the offspring of David. Well, how can he be David's offspring if he's not a physical descendant, a physical being with a human nature that still connects him to David? In other words, this shows that Jesus is still a man in heaven, a glorified man with a glorified physical body who has a human nature that connects him to David and humanity. But now notice something even more astonishing. He's not just David's offspring, he's David's root. He's the root of David's family tree and the offspring of David. How can you be the offspring of someone and the root from which that one springs up? Because the tree springs up from the root. No root, no tree. No tree, no branches, no leaves, no fruit. The root, the sap from the root gives life to the tree. So Jesus says, I'm the root to David's family tree. I'm the sap, the life of David's family line. I sustain his family line. I preserve it. I create it. But I'm also his descendant. In other words, this statement itself implies Jesus is God, man. As God, he's the root of David's family tree. He is the root that gives life to David and his family line and sustains and preserves it, because the root is what sustains a tree. But as a man, he's a descendant of David.